Ishtar, Gardens of Babylon, or P-Zone, Gardens of Scarborough, as it may as well be called for all the good the theme does it, is a tile-laying, area control-esque game which plays out in a kind of abstract fashion. Players will use their turns to take tiles from the kind of not mancala, but the circle of things. Then they will use these tiles to place on the board, gaining gems which they can use to upgrade their abilities and gain endgame scoring points, or to plant trees which will also give them points. Players will choose the next tile along for free, or they can pay gems to skip over tiles. When they have a tile, they're looking for a few things. The first is the amount of flowers, that dictates some of the scoring things, and then the bonus icon, if either has one. A question mark lets you do either of the two bonus actions. This man lets you place one of your assistants out onto the garden, therefore claiming that garden. No one else can claim that garden now. And the star symbol down here lets you upgrade. Pay 2 gems straight onto the board to upgrade or get a power. This one, for example, just gives you 2 gems of any colour, and the top row cannot be done until you have the bottom row effect claimed already. So I can't get this one until I've got this one here. These give you in-game kind of powers, this one as well, but the top ones all give you points. When you take a tile, you must place it in a manner that touches one of the fountains or one of the tiles that is already out on the board. And then you can choose to do the action if there is one. When you place it, any gems you cover up, you will take. These are indicated on the board, and the instructions do tell you to put a gem on each place. But really that adds a lot to setup time, and you can do without it if you want. I've done it just to look pretty today. It's lovely, isn't it? So for example, if I went here, I would put this here. I would take these 2 gems into my possession, and then I would have a chance to put a assistant out, which I might do like that. There is 2 different concepts you need to understand. A group of tiles that are touching is called a garden, and a garden can only touch one fountain and one garden. Each fountain can only have one garden attached to it. The beds of flowers are called flower beds, and you can link these up, and later on you may be able to get a tile here that goes like that. Here you have your garden is the same size as your flower bed, but later on you may have something like this, where you have 2 gardens, 2 flower beds, and 1 garden. The person who has control of the fountain is the one who has the most tiles, not the most flowers, because each of these fountains will score a certain amount of points at the end of the game for the player who has control of them. And indeed, there is a bit of a points salad going on here. Especially if you upgrade your board, you can get points for being next to relic stones on the board. You can get points for your leftover gems, points for being next to trees, and points for any of your assistants that you haven't used yet. The game goes on until 2 of these columns of 2 of these columns of tiles are emptied, and then you will go through scoring. Trees come out and can only be placed on a grass bit, but they can be placed on any grass bit, so you can use them to block. However, you may be giving your opponent points if you do so. That is a basic overview of how to play P-Zone Gardens of Scarborough. Hello, welcome to another board deck and dice review for Zatu Games. Today we're looking at Ishtar, Gardens of Babylon from Bruno Cathala and Evan Singh. And I think the real issues with Ishtar are not to do with the gameplay so much, but to do with the kind of generic theming and the fact that a lot of people will overlook this. As I said in my overview, this could be called P-Zone Gardens of Scarborough for as much as the flavour and theme comes across. Even on these tiles, the flowers are all one colour, which probably helps for scoring and counting them up, but kind of misses out on the kind of growing sense that you are building something together. Yes, you turn this desert into a big green and yellow spotted duvet, but that's it for the colour. In fact, you're taking colour off as you cover up the gems. So yeah, for the theme, it's just like you're growing a big golf course with different lengths of grass. When it comes to actual gameplay, there's a lot to like, and I think it's a real shame that this one will be overlooked. And I would like to see more done to integrate some of the scoring and some of the clever gameplay mechanics into things that make sense, maybe thematically. I do not feel negatively about this game, I just feel there's some wasted opportunities. In terms of components, everything's really nice, the cards are good quality, you have these little plastic fountains, and the colours indicate different values. Purple is the most common, red second most, and white the least, and that dictates their value. The player boards are nice. Everything is nice quality. The insert works reasonably well as long as you don't shake it around too much. Setting up is a bit of a faff if you're going to put all the gems on the board. When I play this, I don't put all these gems out on the board. I simply just look at the colours and take the gems from a supply. Which is a shame because it does look great like this, but it's just as fiddly covering up gems and then taking them off the board as it is just remembering what colours. It's a lot easier to just put your tile out and say, I've covered a red and purple, and take those. The basic tile laying is good. It's a little confusing in the difference between gardens and flower beds in the rules. There is some that I don't know if it could be written better, but that is something you need to grasp to play the game. In my experience, there are various ways of winning. Not loads, but people can go after the fountains, which can be a strong tactic. People can go after these bonus scores, like the one that gives you 7 points per assistant you don't use and you manage to get in front of you. That can give you a lot of points. You can collect gems to get lots of points from the gem ones, and that doesn't necessarily mean you don't even have to get in on a fountain argument to do that. You could just go around claiming all the gems as people set you up, and that's really nice, and it's one of the strengths of the game. The game reminds me visually and in play a little bit of kind of route building games like Blue Lagoon and Through the Desert. I would say there's a little bit more complexity here in what you have to understand to play the game, but it gives you those same kind of feelings of a rapidly decreasing play area. You can be quite nasty in this game and you can block people off deliberately, or if they haven't claimed the space with an assistant yet, you can whip in and claim a space. This whole setup here, this circular setup of tiles, there is some variation in this in the order the tiles come out, but also there's these extra bits to put on that dictate where these go. So you might have two of the same shape in the row. Was that necessary to add variation? Probably not. You could probably just have said put the pieces out randomly. You don't need to have these actual designated little bits. Again, my complaints are a little bit faffy and a little bit maybe harsh, but it's because I think with a few different tweaks, a few different focuses, this could have been a game that a lot of people enjoyed. The gameplay itself, there is not much to do in your turn. You're going to choose a tile, place a tile, activate the tile's power, and then possibly upgrade and use a power there, or buy a tree to plant. Trees are interesting because they give you another way to block people, to stop them from playing these little extension ones that you can play through your powers. But they may also give that person more scoring. So if you want to potentially block off yourself or other people, it's very interactive. Once you see that a person has used both their double and single flower bed extenders, which are 2 powers down here, then you can leave them to some extent or place your tiles in ways that they cannot mitigate. So it's quite direct and in your face. And if you let anyone develop a big garden in one corner or in the middle while you just do your own thing, you're probably going to regret that. Which I like a lot. The gameplay can slow down a bit as people think about what to do, where to go. There are a lot of choices in this game, seemingly more than there should be in a lot of ways. Which colour gems you take isn't often the most pressing choice, because there's always 5 trees out and you can usually wangle your way to 1, and I haven't seen a tree strategy win the game. But you want to get a couple of gems, 2 or 3 if you can, with your placement of the tiles, and that's usually what dictates it. But you want to be looking to build big tiles. Some of these tiles have complete gardens on them, flower beds, and some have 4 flowers on. So yeah, I think what I'm basically saying is I wish there'd been a little bit more development. Some of the bits feel a little bit more fiddly, and it doesn't help itself by in setup saying put the gems on the board. As pretty as that looks, it literally, most of the setup time is spent doing that. Added to that, the unnecessary tiles that you have on the circular board, and the addition of trees and powers, and you're getting to that point where the kind of too many cooks spoil a broth, and too many peas spoil any meal, really. So there is that. You could play a kind of more basic version without the powers, without the trees, for sure, to get used to it. But yeah, it's a super interesting one. This one, I actually really like it, and I will be keeping it in my collection. I think the rules are written pretty well, apart from I do think the gardens and flower beds could be explained slightly more clearly, and I think it scales well with 2 players. It's, you know, you can have quite a direct conflict game with each other, or you can kind of split off into corners. It scales up to 4 players quite well. With 4 players, you're likely to add a lot to the playing time. But yeah, I think overall my question about this game is not why it exists from a gameplay point of view, because I like the mechanics, but kind of this stuff, all this, it's just a bit boring. And the colour they do have, you're gradually taking off the board and covering up just to paint it all green. And it would have been nice to see something different, rather than a kind of gardening one, which, yeah, I mean, it works, but it's not the most connected thing in the world. And it does just bring back those kind of comparisons to Through the Desert and stuff like that. So overall on this one, I recommend it. I know I've been saying a lot of critical things, but I'm trying to think and give you more information, because there's so many games out there. If you like abstract, interactive games where there's a high level of being able to ruin your friends' plans, possibly at the expense of yours, where there's quite a lot of choice for what might look like kind of a gateway game, I would probably say this is around Gateway Plus, a little bit more than your normal entry-level game into the hobby, then there is absolutely a lot to love here. I wouldn't play it with hugely analysis paralysis prone players, but I think it does, for those who aren't as entrenched in the hobby as perhaps I am, it looks good. For me, it looks gradually worse as the game goes on, and it brings back the memories as I've already discussed, but it looks good. And there's some interesting mechanisms like choosing, but being able to choose the next one or pay your resources to skip round is quite a nice thing for people to think about, and then you add in the trees. So it's just a shame that it could have been a really, really high recommendation with a bit more polish, is what I'm saying, and a bit more of a critical eye during the development stage, not only of those kind of gameplay aids and mechanics, but also of some of the kind of visual development, I guess. I would say, even when you play with the tiles off, the colours of the gems are really small on them, and that would have been a great way to add a bit more colour. Put bigger picture gems on the tiles, then you don't need to feel like you need to add them to make it look pretty. Yeah, so a bit of a mixed bag here. Love playing it. Would always play a game of it. Setup can be a bit of a bum ache if you use the gems on the board. You don't need to use these tiles. Leave them in the box and just randomly put the things out as you go, and you could have a really good, interesting game with this. And people that I play this with also go, oh, there's a lot more to think about than I thought. And there is. And the end can come really quick, and you find you haven't got any scoring unlocked, and you probably will get beaten by someone who's played it before. But that whole thing is something I love. I love that element of this game. So that's my thoughts on Ishtar, Gardens of Babylon, soon to be rebranded, P-Zone, Gardens of Scarborough. Thanks very much for watching another Zatu review. Please like and subscribe our videos and join us on all our social media channels. Thanks very much. See you next time.